You're watching PEGRI TV, Rhode Island's public access channel.
The wheel is turning and you can't slow down. You can't let go and you can't hold on. You can't go.
Hello, welcome back into my wheelhouse. Happy April Fools. April 1st, first of the month. We got our Final Four in college basketball all set. The Elite Eight and the Sweet 16 was very exciting. Best part of the tournament so far.
Probably got some upsets.
Good.
Did Shay just say college basketball was very exciting?
Very exciting. It wasn't good basketball, but it was very exciting. Very good. Very exciting. Not good basketball, but very exciting.
You know what you miss on that?
That lasted a whole 2 seconds.
What you miss on that is that I was thinking about it a lot, how your response to college basketball is that I could go to a junior high game and have a tremendous basketball experience.
Yeah, it's
and
about
just
the
enjoy
experience.
It. And that's my. I'm
I'm
not
enjoying
looking
it.
at that junior high game and going, man, those guys can't play. I'm judging it by the experience I just had. I'm sure if you went to Logan's playoff game, that must have been an exciting thing for Logan to see.
Great. I'm not saying it's a
Yeah,
bad experience.
I kind of feel bad for Shay's future son.
I'm not saying it's a bad experience. I'm
So
saying
when
it was
you
a
go
great
to
experience.
Great game, but
and when you watch
kind
the
of
pro
suck.
game so many times, you really didn't have a good experience. When I know the talent level was good, but
That's okay.
I go for the positive experience.
No, there was a lot of positive experience games. A lot of positive experience.
You got a
games.
lot of backhanded compliments, is what he's trying to say.
Yeah, that's okay. We got a lot of stuff going on in the NBA as well. It's winding down. Most teams have 5 or less games remaining. We'll touch on maybe some of the All-NBA recognition as the playoff is around the corner. Obviously, we'll talk about the whatchamacallit. We got any chumps or anything?
God, I got a chump. I mean, thanks for asking me. I got a couple back on, but this one's driving me nuts. I don't know who to give it to, but it's gotta be some trainer or some sports physiologist. It's the term. Load management.
Okay, that's the chump.
It turns me. Load management.
People who
it's
say
like,
the
yeah,
term,
You know,
I
it's like now. Kawhi's missed 20 games this year.
Yep.
Load management. When Pop tried to rest guys Duncan, and the commissioner was on him. All right, you can't tank. All right, you can't put guys. But they found this term that all of a sudden, it sugarcoats everything.
It's excused laziness.
Right. Well,
Yes.
now they've started to
I
reprimand
hate it.
teams because LeBron was doing load management
Oh,
since coming
don't
back
say
from his
the word.
whatchamacallit game. So they said the league office went to the Lakers and said you have to list the injury with the load management that he's managing because similar to how you're getting frustrated with it, other people, constituents were getting upset with it. So now LeBron next to his name, because LeBron got shut down for the rest of the season, now next to his name it says load management groin.
Well, yeah, at least you can blame the groin.
Well, I mean, you can't.
That was obviously a nagging
You
injury.
know, I think injury is one thing, but what I don't like is that you're seeing like in the Eastern Conference right now, where the teams there's 4 or 5 teams fighting for those final berths, and the teams are playing each other. Load management should not come into play for when we're playing Brooklyn. We should be playing our guys because just to have a competitive game with that team that's fighting for its playoff life, and the other teams
They don't care enough. They'd rather have a healthy
For
team.
Kawhi, it might as well say DNP.
Right.
Contract year.
Yeah.
Or DNP.
Yeah.
We're good enough already.
Okay.
Want
Toronto's
to
actually-
appease him.
How about Marcus Morris? That's my chump. He says today that they're going to have a 30 for 30
I
about
know,
the team.
I know. That was yesterday.
That's
or the
not
day
for him
before.
to decide.
Well,
And what is he talking about?
I think they're really reaching for straws now. I mean, it's like, come on, let's turn the wheel and we'll get to it. I agree with you on that, and I'm usually on his side.
Oh.
Yeah, Big Three trivia
Right
started
into
off with
trivia.
some questions.
All right, the big 3 leaders in field goal percentage among those
Zion.
who have attempted 100 or more.
Oh, go Bear.
Gobert is number 2, 67%.
Capella.
Clint Capella is number 3, 64%.
Oh man, I should.
The other 2 play on the same team. Number 1 and number 4 play on the same team.
I had a guess and then I don't know.
I might have thrown you off.
Stephen Adams.
No, that's a good guess though. He's on the top 6.
Yeah.
Mitchell Robinson.
Mitchell Robinson is number 1.
Doesn't count.
What do you mean it doesn't count? What are you talking about?
Has he made enough? Has he taken
He's
enough?
got 225
He's got more
attempts.
blocks than missed shot attempts.
And DeAndre Jordan's the other one.
Jordan.
Fun
There you
fact,
go.
Time Lord, your favorite player, Robert Edwards, or Robert Williams, is 33 of 46.
He doesn't miss a lot.
If he was 50 more shots,
Yeah.
he'd be 72%.
Did he go to Texas Tech?
No, Texas A&M.
Texas A&M.
Close.
All right, the big 3 leaders this season in plus minus. This is a good one. This is one of those.
Chris Paul.
No.
Oh, he's always really good at that.
James Harden.
No, he's not even on the top 11.
Okay.
Rudy Gobert.
Rudy Gobert, no. We've got MVP candidates here.
Did you say we have MVP?
Plus minus. It's typically
Giannis.
Yeah, Giannis is number 1.
Giannis.
Paul
Sorry,
George.
I said Giannis.
Typically the best. Yeah, Paul George is on the list. He's number 10.
Kawhi.
Kawhi is, yes, he's number 8.
Thanks
so,
for the,
yeah,
thanks for the clue.
KD's number 2, Steph's number 3. Pretty obvious names.
Wow.
Here's one for NCAA March Madness. John Wooden and Mike Krzyzewski share the record for most NCAA Final Four appearances by a head coach. 12 each.
Right.
Name 3 of the other 4 head coaches with 7 or more Final Four appearances.
Dean Smith.
Dean Smith, number 1.
Tom
He's got
Izzo.
11. Tom Izzo now has 8. He's number 3.
Bobby Knight.
Or he's tied for number 2, I should say. Bobby Knight, not on the list.
Cal.
No.
How many Final Fours does Cal have? 6?
Jim Calhoun.
No,
How many Final Fours does Cal have?
He doesn't have many.
not 7 or 8.
Okay, that's right.
because he has
Seven or
one-
eight.
There's
Yeah,
one
you're
with,
you're
one
right.
with
I
7,
figured-
one with 8.
Patino.
Yes.
Really?
Rick Pitino
That's
is on the
right.
list. He's on the top 4. He's got 7
With 3 different teams.
appearances. And Roy Williams has 8.
Roy Williams.
Oh,
obvious
that's an
one.
easy one.
So good work, guys.
Yeah, we did pretty good on that.
Moving right along.
Okay, we'll close this one out. Just not necessarily who do you think's going to make it, but open-ended. The Western Conference is all set in stone for the teams that will be in the playoff race. There will be some jockeying around for positioning for seeds, but what is not settled is the Eastern Conference. Obviously, the top 5 seeds are in place where they will be. We could see maybe ourselves with the Boston Celtics and the Indiana Pacers switching for who's 4 and 5. But for the 6, 7, and 8 seed, we have 5 and kind of more so 4 teams running for these spots. Currently in the running, we have Miami, Detroit, and Brooklyn in the playoffs currently. Orlando is on the outside peeking in. They're just a half game out right now. And then Charlotte is in the 10 seed. Theoretically, they could get in, but I would say that they've kind of mailed it in more than these other teams who kind of are making big pushes late. So maybe based off of storylines, personal preference, out of those 4.5-ish teams, who would you like to see in the playoffs?
Dwayne Wade.
Dwayne Wade.
Of course, that's the number 1 storyline,
and, you know,
I think.
and really, I picked Miami, but I wasn't even thinking Dwayne Wade.
Yeah,
I know but he
It
just doesn't mean
seems
that
like
much
it's
to
almost
me.
destined to happen
Yeah.
because he's come up big in a lot of games down the stretch,
You see
which
where
he always
refused
seems to
Moutier
do.
the shirt?
Yeah, that's funny.
That's really funny.
No, Moutier doesn't deserve it.
Well, he should have at least he should have smoothed it a little bit better than nah.
What? They said, like, I'm giving it to someone else. Whatever.
Whatever. Well, anyways,
Considering
so
how-
I was thinking more Spoelstra and Dragic, Kelly Olynyk, and how hard they
Dragic.
play. Right? But anyways, I had Miami. My other ones obviously is Brooklyn. I would really
Yeah.
like to see Brooklyn get in.
Yeah,
and,
considering how lukewarm the pool is down at the bottom of that conference, I don't hate any of these teams. I like the Heat.
No.
I like the Magic with
Kemba.
Vucevic. I think there's a lot of promising talent for the future. So they're all like decent to watch.
So,
it's not like
I love
previous
Brooklyn.
years.
I love how hard they play. They play the game different than other teams, which
Yes.
is nice. With the drive to the basket, it's just pretty cool to watch. Even Joe Harris is a stationary shooter, and he drives to the basket, so it's definitely a philosophy of play. And then I like Atkinson a lot.
Yeah.
What
I
about
like
Jared Allen? He's
Yeah, I think-
Jared Allen,
swats people left and right.
Denise says that throw is just hard to look at.
It almost
Hard
looks,
to look
it
at.
almost looks
She doesn't
fake.
like it.
No, she says,
Wow.
man, talk about 25
Hot
years
takes,
ago.
Denise.
That's
She
not coming
she
back.
prefers beards.
Yeah, I guess so.
He's pretty thin and not that strong.
I think that,
Ponytail.
I think that Brooklyn does have the strongest core and coaching system that'll carry over. When I'm thinking about these teams, I want to think about who's going to give the 1, 2, 3 seed the toughest road to the next thing. None of them are going to none of them are going to upset these teams, but who are going to make it hardest on those teams on top of this conference, and when they come to the Eastern Conference Finals or the second round, where those miles that they logged in the first round might come back to bite them. And that's why I think teams like Miami and Brooklyn are good. And then that's where I'm not as confident on Orlando
Yes.
being a competent,
You're right.
just good competitor overall. I think that's why Detroit makes more sense. I think having to go up against a Drummond-Blake combination in the playoffs, they're going to rough you up a little bit more than these other teams are. And I think Charlotte should, I want them out on purpose because that means it's less likely that Kemba gets recognition for all NBA.
They
it's
pretty
less
much
likely,
are out,
yeah, it's
though.
less likely that they'll be able to re-sign him for long-term money, and it's more likely that he gets his butt out of there into a more relevant situation elsewhere. So I'm happy that Charlotte is looking like they're fading away. Hopefully they can re-up with some different young talent elsewhere. But I think that Miami's definitely in. We've seen them play strong against both Philadelphia
and their late season
and
rush
Milwaukee.
is consistent.
Yes, and then,
every year they peak at the
right,
end.
and then Detroit.
At about 500.
Detroit differently plays horrible against Philadelphia, but Detroit plays well against both Toronto specifically, which is an interesting storyline because of Dwayne Casey, former coaching there. They've gotten 2 wins against Toronto this season. I know Kawhi didn't play in one of those games, but it's still an interesting look overall. So I think that those teams will be the most exciting ones overall. And obviously you want to see Dwayne Wade in the playoffs.
I just said that like you started, you prefaced it by saying the teams that you would like to be able to beat the 1s, the 2s, and the 3s. And I'm not there anymore. It's kind of sad that I've got to this with the Celtics. I don't even care about that now. It's like I'm not even thinking about what's going to make the path easiest for the Celtics. It's almost like I've settled in when we get to the Celtics to they're getting what they deserve. I mean, what am I thinking about?
I just want to watch good games.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm not even thinking that no more.
I'm thinking.
And I was. I understand.
All right, we'll do a little recap on the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. I think the Elite 8 really pulled together 3 really strong games. Most notably, the Purdue-Virginia game that went into overtime. Carson Edwards debunked my theory that he was going to fizzle out after those first 2 performances. I think he's 6'1", but that looks generous. That's what he's listed at. I don't know if I believe that. But
what a game!
But he was electric. He had 42.
That was one of the games of the year.
Did you guys watch the whole
10
game?
3-pointers. I watched most of the first half, and then I watched the second half of the second half.
I had to watch the second half at work behind the desk, so I'm trying to contain my emotions. But a couple times I'm just like, whoa!
Yeah.
And people are walking by like, what's going on
Very
with this
rarely
guy?
do I watch a game more than once. So that game is really special, and for obvious reasons with me. And I try not to get caught up in what everybody. But we're getting texts from Matt. Matt's going, "This is wild. This is wild," as he's going. That game had everything you could ever imagine as far as excitement and stuff. What amazing play. Tremendous clutch performances all over the place. And then what that kid did, I mean, Carson Edwards, those were deep shots,
Big-time shots.
pressured.
It was good defense
running
as well.
off. And they played Kie Clark, who's the best on-ball defender, all the way up on him. When that didn't work, they backed him up. They put DeAndre Hunter on him, and DeAndre Hunter actually did a decent job on him.
He was playing good
He had to
defense.
give him a little more space. He was up on him. He's still hitting shots. And then they had to back it off and put Kie Clark back on him again to change it up again. And Kie Clark down the stretch, he made a couple nice defensive plays where Carson Edwards did miss the last 2 shots he took with him on him. But that game I could talk about for the rest
It's
of
an
the
instant
show.
classic, and I think it's something that we'll look back on even 20 years from now and say, well, remember that game. Diakite had some amazing
I
defensive
brought him
plays
to the
as
table
well.
for you guys the last couple of games, and
I had never really noticed him until the past couple of games, but he really stands out. Like, he makes the
He's a
great
quick
clutch block or grabs a
what
big
nice block
rebound.
shots, huh?
And of
Very quick
course,
jumper.
we're not even talking about this if he
Very
doesn't
well.
release that ball right in the nick of time
How
and
often
sink
do you
it.
see the down 3, make 1, miss 1, rebound, and get the hoop?
Back tap,
How often do you ever see that?
all the way to the back
that was the
court.
most
And
impressive
then
part with the rebound.
Kie Clark in that
Great pass.
situation.
The
Incredible pass.
It was
presence of
amazing.
mind.
He gets that thing, and 90% of the time you're going to fire. You're not this time. You're coming over half court and you're letting it go. He's got Ty Jerome on one side going, ball, and he's got Kyle Guy on the other side.
Both very
but he's
hot.
got the president side. On the side, he's looking at Tony Bennett because Tony Bennett won his last time out. And then he hits
Good composure.
Diakite, Mamadi. And Mamadi, if you watch that shot, I mean, it hit here, it never moved, and it couldn't. Because if he dropped that thing a little bit to shoot,
Block.
he shot it as he caught it right off his fingertips from about 8 feet. What amazing
was
shot.
a big
It reminded me of like the Grant Hill inbounds to Leitner because it needed to be exactly perfect. and it was.
Both Kyle Guy and Ty Jerome had big games. I think Kyle Guy had 25 and 10. Ty Jerome had
Yeah.
like 24, 7 and 5 or something like that. They both played really well. Logan was comparing Carson Edwards to Isaiah Thomas. I thought that was a pretty valuable
He doesn't penetrate
comparison
the
overall.
same way.
Yeah, but his perimeter game is similar, and I think that his inside game was kind of restricted because of how strong Virginia was playing defensively. If you look actually earlier in the tournament, I think that comparison reigned more true, and just overall encompassing comparison, I think it made sense. The game was very exciting. Very obviously, Virginia's moving on, and we'll be able to talk
just
about
one
the
more
Final
thing
Four
on
later.
that, because I know, and thanks for not saying it, because I know it's got to be in your mind, is that it's interesting how DeAndre Hunter played in that game. And he didn't play well, and he didn't look like a lottery pick. And they actually put him on the bench the last 5 minutes of regulation before he came in. But then down the stretch, he took it to the hole 4 straight times. Took it right to the rim. Once the 7'3" guy got him, nice block shot. The other time he got fouled, made the 2 clutch foul shots. The other time a guy deflected it and went off his leg and out of bounds. And then the 4th time he finished to give him the final lead. I kind of mixed on what I saw from it. And then I really got kind of a look at the end of the game, the personalities there and how strong Kyle Guy is and Ty Jerome, how mature they are. But I'm looking at Hunter, and Hunter's got this aloofness to him that's a little bit different. You know, it's like
I think when you're playing beside players who are so cerebral and so aware that maybe he just gets exposed a little bit more.
Or is it a lack of confidence that he doesn't know how good he is yet? Or
well, I just think that aspect of the game where he can really assert himself offensively, especially as the initiator of the play, I don't think that necessarily is there. I mean, I think he's
those last 4 takes were pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really finish them. I mean,
he finished one, he got fouled on one, and a 7'3" guy blocked his shot. So he got it to the rim all 4 times.
Right. I mean, he continues to ring true as an elite defender, and I think that's what's going to. That's what's
amazing to be able to play that Carson Edwards the way he played.
Right. That's what's going to translate, and I think that he has the ability to be a strong catch and shoot 3-point shot maker in the next level. So I think he's going to translate as a strong role player. I think he's still obviously going to be a top 6 pick. I don't think that just because he was maybe passive or
what
in
do you
these,
think
in
about
these last
Carson
couple
Edwards
games.
as far as
He's second rounder. He's going to be a second rounder.
Really?
Well,
Even though he can shoot like that,
he's
because
too small.
he's got that step back. You know, he's perfected the
not-
Curry.
A couple of pretty lucky bounces too.
Yeah,
I
he's
mean,
not-
Well, he didn't really get any lucky bounces. Other than the one off the backboard, they were all dead center.
He's not.
They were splash.
He's not permissible enough on defense, and despite his strong shot making, a lot of it is
But a
difficult.
performance like that usually pushes you out.
Yeah, it'll push him up from being
Look
the
at
45th
DiVincenzo.
pick to being the 33rd pick.
there's no demand for point guards.
Yeah, I think that Edwards.
Well, some teams
he'll
need
find
point guards
a
bad.
home
Yeah,
as a microwave bench scorer on some second round draft.
There's probably 4 point guards that are ahead of him in this draft. Easily.
So luckily for Virginia, they get to move to the Final Four. Tony Bennett's first whatchamacallit, he had a nice moment where he hugged his father after the game.
Yeah.
But moving on to the other games, we saw.
Can I give you one more?
Yes, final.
Please. I mean,
Statement.
I'm sorry to be
It's
so invested
okay.
in this, but you talk about Tony and his father, and what I wrote down that he did is he said before you got to remember what happened to this team, and it's really quite a thing to try to rebound from, and certainly to deal with their personnel. And this is what he dealt with his team all season long. He gave them this. It's called TED Talk. You ever heard TED Talk, Sloan?
Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't really familiar with it, but he said he got it on TED Talk, and he said he calls it himself. He says it was a painful gift what happened to them, and he said he used this TED Talk with his team on adversity, and it was, if you learn to use it right, it'll buy you a ticket to a place you could not have gone to any other way. What a beautiful way to put it, in terms of responding to adversity and trying to overcome it, that the possibility that we can get big from this. And
Perseverance.
We can get something from it that we never would have gotten if we didn't have this adversity. So I'm hoping.
I think that's a lot of manufactured adversity.
What?
Manufactured
To
adversity.
lose to the 16?
Yeah, that was their fault, and just because make it into something bellwether cattle
Shay,
prod for them.
Kyle Guy was getting death threats.
Yeah.
Slap it off, but to say manufactured adversity, I mean, what a thing as an athlete to have to handle. The only team that we were talking about it last week, they're going to wear that
I hope they win. I
for
hope they win.
15 years unless they win a
I mean,
championship.
it's easier for you to get
That's
behind.
not just
I think you're more into that because you're a huge Virginia fan.
So Texas
What?
Tech.
You don't think that is a burden to have getting beat
I
by
don't
a
care as
16?
much about the
Yeah,
TED Talk
why
thing.
is it a burden? Because they lost. Texas Tech upset by many considered to be, if not the best team, second best team, one of the best teams in the tournament.
One of my
Gonzaga.
picks.
They beat them 75-69. Clutch performances by Jarrett Culver. Clark and Rui had big games, 18 and 12 from Brandon Clark, who's I think his stock has improved. I've liked what I've seen from him. And Rui, I still am a pretty big question mark on him. He's probably late lottery. Culver in the previous game in the Sweet 16 had 22, 4 and 4. I've really liked what I've seen from him, even though he's been a little bit less efficient in those past 2 games. I think that they have a really strong case to take out Michigan State, who we saw really upset Duke. They won by 1 point. I would like to kind of talk about whose responsibility is it taken, whose shoulders takes the blame for the loss on Duke. We saw a big game statistically from R.J. Barrett, who went 7 for 17, but he had 21, 6 and 6. Zion had a big game, pedestrian, 24 and 14 for him. Cam Reddish was a little absent. He only went 2 for 8 and had 8 points. It's hard to say whether that was because of the knee injury he suffered in the last game, in which he didn't play in the Sweet 16,
or
whether he was just not.
He does
really
it
present.
off the layup line, and he comes in.
I don't know what happened. We don't know what happened.
Well,
So,
he said he can't, and then he plays well the next game. We don't know what happened.
didn't play well
We
the
know
next
the guy
game.
backed out of playing in the Sweet 16 game.
no, he wanted to play. They didn't let him.
No, he
Yes.
chose not to play.
No,
he said, I don't think I can play. They didn't even know about it.
They knew about
Krzyzewski said he did not even know about it until after the layup lines.
So I think Coach K is
That's what people are saying.
most to blame because
what
I
some people are
think
saying.
he got out-coached by Tom Izzo. I think Michigan State was pushing the tempo a lot more. They were attacking the basket. They were attacking the boards, even though they didn't have as many rebounds as Duke. But I think they completely dominated Delorier in the first half.
Yeah.
Delorier had a good second half. But you're overusing Zion, and you're not really running plays for him. They should have run plays through Trey Jones. You got a better chemistry in the half-court offense if you let Trey Jones develop a play for him here and there. But they're just running ISOs to Zion. Zion's settling for a lot of three-pointers. He didn't have his legs about him because I think he was tired after being overused for the first few games of the tournament. And, he was only back, 4 or 5 games before this game.
Was
They choked.
That Michigan State, the Draymond Green, Tom Izzo style, so physical, so strong, that they played that physical, but they had no fouls on them.
Yeah, those.
And that
actually hurt him at the end of the game.
The refs really swallowed the whistle.
So I'm saying, whether the refs swallow the whistle, whatever it is,
Zion
they
certainly
played
got
that physical
fouled
game and hurt
a
him.
lot.
And at the same time, absolutely, but at the same time, they only had 3 fouls, and then at the end of the game, it really came to play. The criticism that I saw that Krzyzewski took was for how he managed the end game with Barrett and Zion, where when Barrett hit the three-pointer, and he started going to Barrett, and he went to Barrett more than he went to Zion.
Every time. Zion didn't even touch the ball a couple times there.
So that's the criticism that he's getting the most of.
That's
Is that
inexcusable.
he shouldn't have, just because he made that 3, it wasn't Barrett time, it's still Zion time. And when you saw Zion coming off that just handoff from Barrett and coming in, I don't know what would have stopped that if they did that every time. If they just gave it to him.
I can understand if Zion garners a double team and then passes out of it, like what happened with the first big 3 by Barrett. But you don't have an ISO with Barrett where Zion doesn't even touch the ball and then clangs the ball.
And then not to blame.
And he missed Barrett's big. He deserves almost as much blame as Coach K, I think, though, because he missed a free throw to tie the game up, and then he
tries to miss.
He gives up the inbound where Cassius Winston. I mean, Winston played an unbelievable game, but Winston pretty much did the Bob Cousy at the end of the game. He should have been fouled immediately.
I think that Cassius Winston and Michigan State played a very, very strong, competitive, composed game. I thought that Cassius Winston, time after time after time, was making the correct decision, attacking the hoop, very, very poised. I was impressed with his play. I don't think that he's going to be that strong of an NBA player, but he's certainly a fantastic college player in terms of he knows the right decision to make. He knows how to really purge a defense, and he knows how to take advantage of what situation when. He knows when to make the right pass, when to take a small floater. And
you know what Charles Barkley said?
What did he say?
He said there's better point guards than Cassius Winston, but there's no better leader.
Yes, he's a great leader.
Charles doesn't make a lot of really good
Charles has been good lately.
He showed it there.
That was a good one.
And I thought that you could tell that Coach K's system, or their lack of, really came to fruition in this game. And defensively, their entire identity was we have Trey Jones and he's a ball hawk and he's going to aggravate the guard and the ball handlers and the play initiators and the other team, and he's going to get in their heads, he's going to aggravate them, he's going to force them to make mistakes. And if Trey Jones slips, it's okay because we have Zion to protect the rim from no matter where he is on the court. And in this game, that didn't happen. That initial first coil of their defense wasn't there because Cassius Winston wasn't fazed by the bulldoggedness of Trey Jones. He wasn't intimidated. He wasn't in his own head. He was able to move past that, and we saw that effect just really dwindle their effect. And I think that maybe you were saying Zion could have been tired. I don't think he was tired, but maybe
he didn't really have the legs in his shot, in his free throws, and his threes.
I think it happened with he was doing a lot to exert himself defensively in the first half and in parts of the second half as well. And I think that was because the game management from Izzo and from Cassius Winston really took a toll on Zion being the secondary means of defense for the Duke defense there. But I think that the number one person to blame is R.J. Barrett. And I understand that it was probably Coach K's decision to start the last play to have Barrett get the ball. And I understand that Zion was maybe a little bit more passive than he should have been, and maybe he should have taken more things. But I don't doubt that R.J. could be a strong player at the next level. But he's going to need to be in the perfect situation. He needs more shooters around him. He needs a initial play creator that he can be the second person to attack a closeout. Because with him on a team like this Duke team, where the only shooter on the entire roster is basically Cameron Reddish, and Cameron Reddish is night and day in terms of what you're going to get from a shooter. He's putting his blinders on so often because he knows if they weren't off, and he's just kind of conditioning himself to do this, that he's just going to be passing to Trey Jones, who the defense is going to leave wide open, and more often than not, besides that Sweet 16 game, he's going to be bricking these shots.
Yeah, 28%.
And what they should have flipped is they should have had Zion initiate the offense more, and Zion has the wherewithal to kick out to R.J. Barrett, and even though R.J. Barrett hasn't shown a great proficiency to be a strong shooter, he does have the ability to attack that closeout better than basically anyone else in college basketball.
And he's not afraid of the moment either.
He's not afraid of the moment. So I think that their roles were flip-flopped in terms of who had the responsibility where and what aspect of the offense.
That's kind of Coach K's fault, though.
And I think it's when Barrett.
I mean, it's Barrett's fault, but it's Coach K's fault for enabling that to happen.
Yes, I agree. And Coach K's number two. It's like 51-49, I think. It's very close.
The other thing
it's
that really
tough to watch because they should have won. They had many chances.
They had close games before, and what Denise is going, they're not going 3 for 3 on these things in the last second.
On these lucky games,
She was kind of right because the other games were. But what hurts that team, obviously, and it'll probably carry forward to the pros, is that Barrett and Zion are both weak foul shooters. They're both in the 60s on foul shooting.
Since
and that
Zion came back from injury, he was actually 52%.
There you go. So you got those two guys on the court that are going to do most of the offense, and down the stretch, they're missing a lot of free throws.
It wasn't a dynamic, offensively planned team, and there wasn't a lot of
Michigan
things.
State's tough.
Coach K did an okay job in the season at making sure RJ and Zion were getting downhill with their left hand, with an open side of the floor, left-handed. Even though their offense had no spacing, he did a good job with those two, trying to maximize from the entirety, from the tip to end, maximizing those two guys. But he didn't do a good enough job at maximizing the team and make sure there was chemistry and make sure the guys were working together.
Give some of this credit to Michigan State on last week. Michigan State took away the transition game.
They did.
Yep. And that was big.
They were totally out-hustled.
You didn't see the open court Barrett, the open court Williamson, because Michigan State was strong enough defensively to take that transition.
I also thought that Duke really fed into that. They really pulled back their horses a little bit.
They had such a, Michigan State had such a collective identity, too. Like their defensive spacing and the high screen and roll, they just took it away from them every single time. Yeah. And on the other side, Duke wasn't really running the high screen and roll that well because they were right there on them. I don't know. I just think Izzo making that sort of pick and pop to the fifth-year senior for the three-pointer right down the
Izzo said
that
Cassius drew that play up. Winston drew that play
up.
All
right. That wasn't even.
He shot it with confidence. And
Izzo at the end, he was.
Two teams that I was impressed with out of the Sweet 16, and one's Texas Tech, as we're watching it. But very strong defensively.
They're incredible defensively.
Very strong defensively. Oregon what an interesting team that is. I mean, they lose Bowl. If you watch their game, and I mean, obviously
That game was ugly. That was an ugly game.
It was an ugly game,
Oh,
but
God.
defensively, Shay, that they brought a lot to the table. They started a 6'4" point guard, right, who was a good player, and 4 long 6'9s. And those 4 long 6'9s, I thought there were 6 guys on the court that whole game.
How do you go from
the
the Duke game to
very strong
that?
defense?
That game was one of the worst games of the tournament.
But
I hated watching that game.
defensively, Oregon was really, really good.
Yeah, offensively
really
it was
good.
beyond putrid.
I'm happy for Izzo because a lot of people were talking about how he went a little too far with getting into it with one of his
Yeah, well,
players.
he did it again.
But
He's
you know
done-
what?
What's happening
There's
there?
nobody
But-
like
but
Izzo
He'll do
that-
it after his team makes a good play and they come off the court and he's in the guy's face and his own teammates have to get Izzo. What's he doing?
He's a
what
good
is it?
coach,
I'd
but
like to know
his
what he's
He's a
doing.
maniac.
He's attacking. He's a maniac.
But you know what? His teammates love him though. And at the end of that
don't love
game,
that, though.
he
What,
was
his
like
team
he was
loves
almost
Izzo?
crying. He was so much. He was so happy for
yeah,
them.
he's very emotional.
So touched on
there's things I don't like
those
about
other
him.
two. The final Elite Eight game that we haven't gotten to yet is Auburn upsetting Kentucky.
Another overtime game.
Another overtime game. Both Bryce Brown and Harper from Auburn were really, really fantastic
good
late down the
guys.
stretch.
High octane.
Very fast, high-scoring punches. I was really impressed with Auburn. P.J. Washington was big in that game, coming back from his injury. He had 28 and 13, including a huge late 3 that was honestly very similar. He caught it up high and kept it up high as the Diakite shot. Hero was extremely disappointing in that game, very passive down the stretch. He wasn't really calling his own number enough, and you could tell that team needed some shooting from the perimeter to stretch the floor offensively, and he and Keldon Johnson were really the only players on Kentucky that could offer that. And Keldon was driving much. I don't know whether his shot was, didn't have confidence in it, but Hero was much too passive, and I was really disappointed in his performance, despite the previous game in the 16 having a nice 20-point game with the biggest shot of the game with that three-pointer that was contested basically to seal the game. What do we think about maybe transitioning to the Final Four?
Okay.
The Auburn was shown that they had a lot of firepower. They've taken out Kansas. They've taken out North Carolina. Now they've taken out Kentucky.
That's
now they're
big.
now
They
they're
took
coming
out
to
the iron of
It's huge.
NCAA
Yes.
basketball.
And the three-pointer got them to that game.
Yes.
And then they were forced off the three-point line in this game, and they just attacked the hole.
Right.
Like they've answered the bell at every obstacle, at every challenge they've had.
So how do you
like
think?
Barkley says, they got a shooter's chance.
Right. How do you think they're going to fare against Virginia? I do think it's going to come down to what they're going to shoot from behind the arc. I think if they have a hot night, they can do it. At the end of the day, I do think that Virginia will be able to clamp them down enough. I think we've seen that unless you're having a nuclear performance from your guard like a Carson Edwards, but even then, it's going to be tough to overcome the all-encompassing defensive strength from Virginia to get a win.
I think every team's a threat to Virginia, and I'll feel that all the time. So I'm not feeling comfortable that we've got a good draw or anything. I
Can't feel comfortable with their offense, but
well,
I mean, they're
they've
one
got
of the
a-
better three-point defensive teams.
Well,
so.
no, they've got a good offense, I think. I think
At times they get a little stagnant.
They do, but Kyle Guy went 3 for 29, and he's probably the best three-point shooter in the country. And then he hits 5 threes in a row. Jerome makes clutch shots. Hunter can score, obviously, and Diakite can. So they got 4 guys who can score, and then they got 2 guys who don't score at all, and they don't play the guys off the bench. But I feel threatened by Auburn. What I like in terms of the Final Four is that is obviously Virginia is that I love Tony Bennett, and I love Tony Bennett like I like Brad Stevens. He's everything you want to see in terms of what he brings to the table as a college a student athlete coach or whatever you want. And when you look at a guy like Bruce Pearl, I mean, he's lucky to still be in the game. I mean, that guy, he was suspended for telling lies to the NCAA about bringing recruits over to his house and having barbecues, and then he lies to the NCAA about it. He secretly tapes recruits, and then so he can play them back to the other team to try to get the other team not to recruit him. So he's trying to catch the recruits saying something negative about the team that's recruiting at the same time. Gets suspended,
Not the
comes
best guy.
back and resurfaces. I hold that against him. I don't
the best
like
guy.
him. Michigan State. I mean, Izzo's got his problems with that same stuff too, and I don't like that weird fire that he's got. It's just crazy that he's
He
going
goes,
that guy.
"We got Jared."
But I do like, Texas Tech's coach. That
Beard
guy,
Horny.
Very good
when you
coach.
look at what he brings, he's a lifer. He's a guy. He's had 12 jobs. I mean, he was a junior high coach. He was coaching this semi-pro team, and he's come up to it, and now he's got it. So I like him. So I like Texas Tech. And I
Texas
like
Tech is
Virginia
my pick to win it
more than I like just because of the
Well,
personalities.
let's
of the
stick with
coaches.
Virginia. I think the reason why Virginia can take care of Auburn is because Virginia takes care of the ball,
They sure do.
unlike Kentucky. And Kentucky played such a sloppy second half. They're throwing the ball away left and right. And Jared Harper was able to just impart his will on that defense. He was getting by the guards so quickly, and nobody else was stepping up. So nobody could stay in front of him, and no center or forward was stepping up at the rim. And that's not going to happen against Virginia. Virginia is a very responsible defense. So
One thing I would add on while
I think
I'm thinking
Virginia's
about
got
it is that Virginia has, Michigan State has taken care of Virginia in 2014 and 2015 in very close games. They've proven to be a real nemesis of Virginia in terms of overcoming their style of play. Michigan State they're a tournament team.
All right, what's your pick?
remember I told you
obviously
Michigan
my
State
pick.
should have been a number one seed.
I got
Obviously my
Texas
pick.
Tech over Virginia. Who you got?
I got Virginia. I'm not
Over Texas Tech,
I'm
who you
not
got?
going anywhere other than that.
I got Texas Tech
I,
over
I want
Virginia.
the story complete.
I think Michigan State is
They're
just
tough.
Michigan State over
rolling.
Virginia.
They
All
are
right,
a tournament
spin it.
team.
The madness.
Boston Celtics, do it. All right, so the Boston Celtics, since we last talked on Monday, played 3 games, got a deserved win, even though it was a little sloppy against the Cleveland Cavaliers without Kyrie Irving. Got a close win with Kyrie Irving on Indiana, where we played a pretty strong game overall, although we probably should have beat them by more. It was looking really good in the beginning, and then we really fought back.
That was an important game.
Kyrie got a game-winning layup, and then we had a really head-scratching loss to Brooklyn, where D'Angelo Russell had 20 points in the third quarter, and we really didn't fight back after that. I think we got 5 games left. We got Miami, then we got Indiana, which will be a big game, then we got Orlando and Washington. We're currently tied with Indiana for the 4 seed. Indiana has basically an identical schedule left. They have Detroit, us, and then Brooklyn and Atlanta, just in terms of teams that are going to be competing and teams that are a little bit lower level. So I think that it's very likely that it's going to be a half game or a game difference between who gets that 4 spot. Just based off of that game and these other 2 games, what I'm seeing and what I'm liking, it's a lineup that I'm starting to realize that wasn't that prevalent in the beginning of the season, but the combination of Horford, Baines, Smart, and Kyrie has looked really, really awesome. And the flow of the offense with those guys on the floor is really perfect. Everyone knows what to do. Everyone knows what their role is. There's not a lot of sloppiness, and there's not a lot of mistakes. And that is reflected in the stats. I believe that is like a net rating of like plus 52 or something like that, as a 145 offensive rating in over 50 minutes. And when you sprinkle in either Jalen, Tatum, or Gordon Hayward into that lineup as the 5th player, every single one of those works well as a cog and doesn't disrupt that same unison that I'm talking about. And I've really liked that. And that was a new look that I think we're going to start to see a lot more in the playoffs.
So where do you put Morris?
So I
just took him out of the
definitely
starting
want Morris is out of the starting lineup 1,000%.
In your mind.
We need,
in your mind.
we
But
need,
nobody has moved in instead of him.
Yeah, but
right now.
So I think that Horford and Baines and Smart and Kyrie and Tatum should be the starting lineup in the playoffs, and I think that we can change that depending on the team we're going to play. More often than not, we're going to be playing.
I like Morris off the
We're
bench.
going to be playing a team that we're not going to need to go small more often than not. I mean, we're thinking about Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, or we're talking about
Miles Turner, Sabonis.
There's a ton of guys, but I have huge problems with 2 guys on the roster. I think that Terry continues to get minutes because we're hoping something clicks with him, and the more we see, the more he continues to prove that he's really failing to continue to live up to the reputation that he deservedly built for himself last year in the playoffs. He's hunting his own shot too much, and often the offense becomes stagnant when he's in the game. And the other is Marcus Morris, and I've always been pretty out on Marcus Morris, and I swallowed my disdain in the beginning of the season because he played so fantastic. And you can make an argument that he was a borderline all-star in the first 30 games of the season because of how strong he was shooting the ball.
It was good then, but it's bad now that happened.
And since, yes, exactly. That's exactly it. Because of such a strong stretch, he built out that confidence that he already had. He inflated in his ego even more than he needed to. But since then, his shooting has fallen into the basement. And since it fell into the basement, it's fallen even deeper into the Earth's core. I think that he has been absolutely putrid. And we look at the plus-minus, and you look at the offensive and defensive ratings, you look at the Nets ratings, everything breeds that Morris and Terry, but more so Morris, is really, really bad for the Celtics. When Morris and Terry are on the floor together, it's a -5. When they're on the bench, it's a +12. When Morris and Terry are on the floor and Smart and Kyrie are on the court, it's a -8. Or Smart and Kyrie on the bench, it's a -8. When there's 3-guard lineup, something we saw in the playoffs a lot last year that we liked. When it was Kyrie, Smart, and Terry, it was a tricky look. The Bucks really didn't know how to handle it. It was an interesting way to handle Philadelphia when they played small lineups. That has been terrible when Morris plays, but fantastic when Morris hasn't. 3-guard lineups are a -9 with Morris and a +14 when Morris is on the bench. The forwards, so the circulation of Jalen, Tatum, Gordon Hayward, and Morris. So there's 16 combinations of them being in the lineup or out of the lineup. 1 plays, 3 on the bench, all 4 in the game, all 4 on the bench. There's 5 negative out of those 16. Marcus Morris is in every single one of those negative lineups. The 4 best net ratings out of those 16 don't include Marcus Morris. All of the other forwards, if they're in the lineup by themselves, so Jalen's in the game and the other 3 on the bench, Tatum's in the game, the other 3 on the bench, Gordon Hayward's in the game, others on the bench, they all have above a +7, ±. When it's just Marcus Morris and the other 3 on the bench, it's a -14. I think
This is like a Rubik's Cube explanation.
The more and more that I am looking into see what the stats are showing and reflecting, the more it is re-instigating the fact that he is bad for the Celtics. I cannot handle his offensive imprint. I cannot handle his long-range 2s. I cannot handle his shot with 21 seconds left in the shot clock. And although he does add some defensive versatility that we will need, that we will need.
Is your plan here to talk the show out
that we will need, that we will
not allow a rebuttal
You're going to be able
to
to
this?
talk. We will need Marcus Morris against Kawhi Leonard and against Giannis Antetokounmpo and against Ben Simmons in spurts. But I think that his minutes need to be stipend down, and I wouldn't be surprised if Terry gets DNPs in the playoffs.
The thing about the top 5 that you said, it has a great plus minus, and we all agree that that's the best 5 to go into the playoffs, is all 5 of those players know their role. And Morris, he tries to exploit his own role. When he gets the ball and he tries to do ISOs or he throws the impossible 3-point shot, I think it messes with the entire chemistry. And if you don't know what your role is on a team, then chances are you shouldn't even be out there.
I couldn't disagree with you guys more in terms of, not in terms of any individual player. I just would say to focus on any individual player on this team and say that's why it is wrong. The fact is that this team has not learned how to play with each other, and they haven't learned how to play off each other.
Okay, but who can we blame most for that?
Total. I don't care what the plus and minus says. When you're actually watching them, they don't play well together. When I watch the Pacers and the Nets, I like those teams better than I like the Celtics in terms of what I'm watching for play. Here's what I would have liked to have seen happen with the Celtics, and it's off the wall, okay? Take a load off, Kyrie. That's what I say. Take a load off. When they played the Cavs, I thought they played relatively well. Relatively well, without Kyrie. What I would have liked to see is to say to Kyrie, load management. You're going to sit for a while. Take it off. Take a rest. Don't play. And see what happens in Indiana without him. And I have a good feeling that would see much better from Terry Rozier and much better from Tatum if Kyrie wasn't in the game. And I don't really feel as though in that end game against Indiana, I would have liked to seen that play out without Kyrie on the floor. I'm not sold that Kyrie's what's winning those games. And then I would continue to say with Kyrie, take a rest. Let's see say we beat Indiana with him. Now bring the same team back to Brooklyn, and let's see if we can get something going with players are playing together. That team has not learned to play together. And there's no reason to expect playoff success. You think that team plays well together?
Kyrie didn't play in Brooklyn.
I know he didn't play in Brooklyn, but I would have liked to see the progression. I think what happens is once you take him out and now you played the Indiana game and you reverted, I would have liked to see him build off the Cavaliers game into the Indiana game, into the Brooklyn game, and Kyrie, and then finally say to Kyrie, why don't we play this easy with you? You're going to come off the bench. And try Lou Williams with him. Try Lou Williams with him. And try bringing him in off the bench and feeding his style of play in. Give him 30 minutes or 25 minutes.
I think Ainge and Stevens know. You're not going to succeed without Kyrie.
Only after we win about 5 games in a row without him. And then we say, because I am looking at this team, and I don't see any reason to expect playoff success from this team.
You're not going to have playoff
just
success
like Marcus
without
Morris.
a superstar
I
like
agree
Kyrie.
that the criticism of Marcus Morris. They're going to do a 30-30 on this team because of the way they're going to turn it around. Do you think this team plays well together? Do you think they play well off each other? I don't think they do.
I see highlights and I see combinations of players that I like, that when they're on the court, I do see the ball pop and I see crisp movements, and I see them trust the Brad ball that we're trying to preach.
I don't.
And yeah, but
It's been 75 games.
maybe you're paying too much attention to the lineups that include Marcus Morris because
No,
those are
I'm
the lineups
not.
that are
I
ugly.
I like Marcus Morris and what he brings to the table more than I like some players, but I'm not going to put it on one player. I'm putting it on the style of play that was seen out there. These
mentioned
players,
Rozier,
I
too.
don't think that these players. I don't think they mesh.
I'm saying
I don't think they click.
when we get to the playoffs and our rotation is going to be 8 players, I think that it's going to be completely fine if in those games the only people that are coming off the bench are Gordon and Jalen, and then you choose, depending on who's playing better, between Marcus Morris and Terry for who gets above 10 minutes, because I don't
You're
want
reaching.
those guys out there.
You know, you're desperate. And
I'm not desperate.
I think anybody
I'm-
that's expecting success out of the team is desperate. And it's a fact that Kyrie has not created relationships with his players. He has not gone to these players and nurtured relationships that allow him to lead. He hasn't done it. He hasn't created relationships individually with his players. A leader has to do that. Larry Bird was connected with all his players. I mean, even players like Kobe Bryant was connected with his
Kobe
players.
Bryant was not connected with his
yes,
players.
Yes, he was. He was connected with his players.
He was connected with Pau Gasol. He wasn't connected to the
connected with
other
his
people on the
players.
line.
Mike,
was
there's a lot of
connected with his
superstars that haven't had that friendship with their teammates. You don't put the
But this is
superstar on the
not
bench.
working. This is not working.
That won't work either.
But this is not working.
You have a better shot at success with one of the best playmakers and best shot makers in the lineup.
Give up the ship. Will you just give up the ship? This is not good, what's
Yes,
happening with this
okay,
team.
I-
and Kyrie's a big, it's not
Sure,
working.
mail it in.
I think it's,
When's it gonna
I
happen?
Think it's much
When's
more
it gonna
obvious.
happen? Tomorrow?
I think it's much more obvious if you're thinking about potential solutions that this team could implement and think about using more frequently in the next 5
There's
games.
not enough time.
in the next
It's not gonna happen.
in the
It's only
next-
5 games.
In the next 5 games.
It's gonna
and in the
happen
playoffs,
miraculously in the
I
last
think it's-
5 games?
I think it's obviously ludicrous to suggest moving Kyrie to the bench. And I think
I'm
it makes,
saying that's off the wall.
Right.
I'm just saying I would have
So
wanted
then-
to
so
see
then-
how it
so
worked
then-
without him.
So then can we move past the ridiculous suggestion that's null and void? And can we think
Well,
about things
I'm
that
saying
can
the
we think
scenario
about
could have played out.
No, but it didn't, and we're not
I
doing
know.
that, and we're moving past
So we're stuck with it.
No, we're not. So
We're
what,
stuck with
so
it.
what decision can be made so that
Well,
we can make
there's
the best
nothing
case
else you can
scenario?
say, Shay. We're stuck with
We're
this
not.
team the
No, we're
way
not.
it is.
No, we're not.
Yes,
If we
we are.
stipend down the things that are clearly poisonous to this team's success, and we heighten the things that have been successful, we're going to have a higher likelihood of having a
And
successful
how can you think
postseason.
that Kyrie is not poisonous to this team's success?
Because he's an elite scorer, he's one of the most efficient point guards in the league,
The
and
team-
when it comes down to it, I want him taking
Shay,
a
the
shot.
44 and 32, it's horrible.
Yes, I know, and if you look at the
It's awful.
duration of
And
the
to
entire
put it on
season-
Marcus
We're not gonna get
Morris
anywhere
is so wrong.
No, it's not. It's completely right. If you look at all the,
I'll
all
give
the
you a
statistics-
just gonna
plus.
go on
I'll
for
give you a
10
good
minutes.
thing. Gordon Hayward and Aaron Baines.
Yes.
That's what I'm seeing as good.
Yeah, I
like
agree.
the change
Let's
of
play
Aaron
more
Baines.
of those guys.
And
I agree.
So I like Aaron Baines and Horford together. I hope that Aaron Baines can stay healthy and play a little bit together.
Somehow you just yelled for 10 minutes and then agreed with us.
No, I didn't. I agree with Baines and Hayward.
Baines and
but I don't
Horford-
agree that this team is playing
They
well
have
together.
better overall consistency and efficiency with Baines in the lineup and not
of
with
Morris.
Morris.
Yes.
That's what we're trying to say.
Baines and Horford are a plus 29 when they play together. Horford and Morris are only like a plus 2.
They're still 44 and 32. Any way you cut it, as long as Kyrie's on the team.
But I don't. That's fine. It's absolutely fine.
It is.
We got upcoming
You don't think that
games.
team would have been better than 44 and 32 if they went with the team that was there last year and didn't have Kyrie? I think they would have.
Yeah, I also think they would have been better than 44 and 32 if we stipend minutes
So
down.
we're
for Marcus
banking
Morris and
everything
Terry
on
Rozier.
them turning it around for the playoffs. I mean, even hearing Sean Grandy and Maxwell say they're going back to 2009. They're saying, man, that team was positioned very poorly going into the playoffs. And Sean Grandy says the best 6 games I ever did as a broadcaster were the last 3 games of that season and the first 3 games of the playoffs against Orlando. The best 6 games I ever
see.
saw a team play.
We'll see.
But that team had Garnett. And that team had Pierce, and that team had Ray Allen. This team doesn't have that.
No, it doesn't. And I'm
It
not,
doesn't.
I continue to not. I'm not closing the door
Well,
completely.
why
on
do
this
you
team.
think? Do you look for success against Indiana after how we played Indiana on our home court? Indiana competes with us very, very
But in
strong.
the-
We can't even think about looking past that
But
team.
in the first half, when we were depending on that lineup of the Horford, Baines, Smart, Kyrie,
No.
and sprinkling the
It's a
floor
48-minute game. It's a
yes,
48-minute
I agree.
game.
But what happened in the second half of the game? We started to go to Morris. We started to go to
Indiana
Terry.
competed with us. They ran with us. They worked with us.
Let's
they
close
battled
out
us.
with the awards. Let's close out with the awards. All NBA. We got 3 teams. I think it's going to be probably pretty similar across. Let's do the guards
that's
first.
what I don't like about this.
My
It's
first
pretty
team, I
predictable.
have Harden, Lillard on my first team. My second team, I have Curry and Kyrie. And then on my third team, I have Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal. Guards.
Harden and George on the first team, Walker and Kyrie on the second team.
I had Georgia as my forward, but that's fine.
Okay.
You didn't do a third team.
I got Curry and Harden
didn't
on
do
the
a third
first team. I got Lillard and Westbrook on the second team. Kyrie and Kemba on the third team.
Both of you left Beal off in favor of Kemba. Okay, that's fine.
Kemba's had
I
a
guess
remarkable
you
season.
want Kemba to stay in Charlotte. All right,
They are
forwards.
10th
I'm
in
saying
the
he's had
East,
an all-NBA season, whether he
That's
stays
fine.
in Charlotte or not.
That's fine. Forwards, I got Giannis and Paul George on my first team. I
That
got
should be unanimous.
Kawhi and Durant on my second team, and Blake Griffin and LeBron James on my third.
I'm
exactly
sorry.
what I
I did have Harden and Curry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
And I got George and Giannis. No,
Yep.
I got George. I got three forwards really.
You took some
know,
liberties, that's fine.
I got Durant, Giannis, and George.
Okay, and then
picked
who are
that.
your second team forwards?
You know, I really toyed with putting Jokic on the first team. I picked
He's a center.
Embiid, Leonard, and Jokic.
You did. You put Jokic on the first team. You can
I
only
did,
have
and I
one. You,
crossed them
you
off.
can only have one center per. So Jokic.
I
is on
know
the
that's how I do it. So you can put Jokic on. So
You had the
I got
same four.
Yeah, I got a carbon
Embiid,
copy of
Leonard,
yours.
and Durant on the
I
second
think
team.
it's tough to have Giannis and Paul George anywhere but the first.
Yeah, and I
the
think
first
I think
team.
it's tough to have LeBron anywhere besides the third team, and I think you can't
is.
put Blake over Kawhi and Durant.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of makes sense. I'm imagining those out.
A lot of
That's
load
probably the
management.
easiest one.
I think those six I'm pretty confident about. I wouldn't be
Because-
surprised if Kemba snuck in over Beal. And finally, the three center spots. So I had Jokic on my first team. I had
Wow,
Embiid on my
nice.
second team, and Karl Anthony Towns. He's averaging 31 and 15 since the All-Star break, on something like 68% true shooting percentage. So
I got the same, except for Gobert's on the third string because he just makes such an impact defensively.
Definitely.
And as we mentioned before, he's top 2 in field
If I had
goal
to pick a
percentage.
third team center, I'm going with Drummond.
Drummond.
Yep.
Really?
So I got
he
a few-
also makes me first team all defensive team.
Wow.
Here's my fourth team.
fourth team. Yes, I'm interested. Fourth team.
Ben Simmons, D'Angelo Russell, Chris Middleton, Danilo Gallinari, and Nikola Vucevic.
Wow.
That's my
You don't
All-NBA
Vucevic,
fourth
you don't like
team.
Yeah. Ben Simmons.
Gallinari
I'm in.
you don't like
I'm in for
either.
Ben Simmons.
And
I'm in for Ben
D'Angelo,
Simmons. I'm in for Ben
D'Angelo's had a
Simmons.
great year.
All right, all defensive teams. My all defensive first team is Marcus Smart and Paul George at the guard slot. I took some liberties here. And then I put Giannis and Miles Turner at my forward slots. And I put Rudy Gobert at my center. Who do you got over here?
I think I
Defense
took liberties as well.
Yeah, you got to kind of.
So I got Giannis as the defensive player of the year.
Me too.
You know, and then I got Paul George and Marcus Smart and
Yep.
Kawhi.
Yep.
Load management with Kawhi, he's missing so many games. But then I really think Drummond has had a tremendous year. And one of the things defensively, and one of the clips that I watched, that game he blocked Harden 4 times.
Yeah, he's a
those
good
were nice blocks.
They were.
I mean, and when you look at his steals, you look at his rebounds, he leads the league in defensive rebounds and offensive rebounds. There's a lot happening. He's run the floor real well. I think you've influenced me negatively on Gobert, and I don't get to see him enough, so I really didn't build my.
He's a great defender.
But I think that Drummond deserves some consideration.
Drummond deserves conversation. Gobert is a better defender than Drummond, but it's fine. Drummond has had a great
Well, you've
defensive
had a
year.
lot of bad things to say about Gobert.
And I continue to. The second, what about your first team?
I think Marcus has had enough playing time to be recognized in the All-NBA first team, even though he's bashed the All-NBA selection process in the past, saying that it's a what is it, a population contest?
Yeah, popularity contest.
Popularity contest. Marcus Smart and Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Giannis, and I got Rudy G. And my second team, I got Beverly. I'm giving Klay Thompson the second team. I took some liberties too. I put Jared Allen and Miles Turner with Joel Embiid. If I'm not allowed that many centers, I'll put
that's-
Pascal Siakam, Spicy P
I
on there.
got one guy that I don't know whether Shay's taking him or not, but I think Simmons has been an incredible defender.
I got Ben
incredible
Simmons.
defender, and
My-
I almost had him on the first team.
My second
really
team
close.
is, I left Beverly off. It was close between Beverly and Bledsoe, but
Yeah.
I put
Oh,
Eric
Bledsoe's
Bledsoe.
had a good year.
I like that
defensively.
Eric Bledsoe, Ben Simmons, and then I put Kawhi Leonard, and then I had PJ Tucker with Joel
Yeah.
Embiid
You
as
know
my
what?
center. And I think that
I'm taking Patrick Beverly
there's-
off.
Yeah, there's
Bledsoe's a great pick.
the Beverly's a good
He
pick
played
too.
an unbelievable game against James Harden.
He's one of the
Good
best
defense
James Harden
this year.
defenders
As
in the
much
league.
as I don't like Bledsoe, I gotta say, that
I've
guy-
never seen Harden so
I
stupefied.
love how he denies the ball to guys that he's playing. You don't see that in the NBA often enough.
But I like Spicy P though. I think he might get some votes.
Let's see if you can spin it and land it on Devin Booker because that's what we're talking about next. Very impressive. Very impressive.
You
All
did?
right.
Did it really
Yeah.
land on Booker?
Yeah.
All right, so Devin Booker is a very hot topic in the NBA.
I don't know why.
He's 22 years old. He's the best player on the worst team in the Western Conference.
And everybody loves him.
His last three
Not the
games
critics.
are 59 points
Players.
at Utah, where they lost by 30. Utah intentionally fouled so that Devin Booker wouldn't have the ability to get 60 points. The game after that, he had 50 and 10 against Washington. It was a closer game. They were in it to the end. They only lost by 3. And most recently, he had 48 points and 11 assists, just 2 points shy of being, I believe, the 4th player ever to have 3 straight 50-point games and a 5-point loss to Memphis. So he's averaging over 40 points per game in the past 3 weeks. He's obviously one of the most nuclear scorers in the league. Do you think this is a case in overall the discussion of good stats, bad team? And do you think this speaks more on him being able to score and him having a bad supporting cast, or him maybe not being conducive to winning and he's maybe more responsible for the losing?
They're just a bad team still, and I think he's an egomaniac and likes the points. He likes scoring, but I think it's also good for the fans. Like, if I lived in Phoenix, I would want to go see Devin Booker put on a clinic.
Yes, I
Like, we've kind of gotten on Russell Westbrook for trying to average a triple-double and obviously just trying to pad his stats at the end of seasons. But in the end, he's still an amazing player to watch, and it's still an unbelievable product. We've gotten on Kobe in the past for playing in meaningless games and pouring it on, even though their team is nowhere near the playoffs.
No,
but he's still been amazing to watch.
I think any bad rap on him is really stupid talk. Because,
and he's also a great guy.
And what we've got from the beginning of the year is talks that they forced that guy to play out of position, and he's actually done a pretty damn good job on facilitating in a position that he really shouldn't be playing. I can see how some people look like supposedly. He told his brother at halftime that he's going to go for 50.
Go for 50.
And I can see how that would play wrong with some people that he's got more in his mind that I'm going for 50. But the team's 85 and 236 since he's been on the team. It's not like you're going for victories at this point.
He should have said some little young sick kid asked him to score 50. Maybe that would have been a good cop-out.
He is 22 years old.
Right. No, he's absolutely remarkable. The scoring that he's doing at this level is basically only rivaled by like LeBron and Carmelo and a small handful of people. Well, think about 22-age-old Carmelo Anthony was incredible. So I think that he absolutely could translate to a winning team. I think that it's a little bit harsh to get on him for not being a strong defender. I know there's a lot of writers who have said, who cares if he scores this many points, he gets torched defensively. When on the flip side, we got players in the MVP conversation that are not that much of a defender at all, and James Harden's and the Kyrie Irvings and the
I think James Harden's played pretty decent defense.
He's played good post defense, but I think that's more situational, and D'Antoni has done a good job to make sure that he's been in the right spots.
Got some steals.
But I think that Devin Booker can absolutely be a second best player or a third best player on a championship team. I think that he's just currently in a situation where it's not conducive to winning. I don't think I like Igor. I'm still unsure on him. I still haven't seen enough of him. But every game I watch, I become a little bit more uncertain on him. Ayton is promising, but he's not ready yet in terms of a full game ready for a winning
management,
game.
You got to say that management just like the Knicks,
horrible.
is something that's let them down. To go that whole season without a point guard, I mean, that is stupid.
So looking forward, I think that, they're obviously going to have another top 4 pick. If they can get lucky and land a Zion and then sign a Rozier or something like that, or even if they sign a different 4 and they draft Morant, I think that things will begin to look up for them. And I hope Booker continues to put on scoring clinics. And it's not that he's, he may be addicted to scoring, but it's not to a fault, I think. If you watch that late in that Memphis game, he was drawing legitimately 4 defenders, and he was making the right pass. And you can tell he wants to win over anything. It's just that if he can score 50, why would you not score 50? If you can score 50, score 50. And it's just that I think that we're going to continue to see more scoring punches from him where he's going to get borderline 60-point games. Before the season, we set the over-under for his high total at 48 for the year. I think all of us picked over, and we were all right. It's really interesting. And it's funny because people who are arguing it against are looking back at his career totals. Every game, except for one game, I think he's had 7 games in his career where he's had more than 45 points. have been in March or April. So it's kind of funny. It is interesting, and these people do have ammo to say this guy he's a good stats, bad team guy, and once he translates to a winning team, he won't be as much. But I think that's a little bit more incorrect than it is have some good switch. But I think
besides Steph Curry, how many players can say that they can win a championship as a guard as the best player on their team? It doesn't happen that often.
Kyrie's trying.
He's trying. We'll see how it goes.
Not trying hard enough.
I think maybe next Monday we'll have like one game left in the regular season. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the NBA season. I hope you enjoy the Final Four.
Yeah.
It'll be the championship night next time we talk to you.
Go
So
Virginia.
Thank you, my
Thank you.
Wheelhouse. Until next time.
Wheel is turning and you can't slow down. You can't let go and you can't hold on. You can't go back and you can't stay